One day around 850 CE, a goat herd named Cowdy observed that after nibbling on some berries, his goat started acting abnormally. Cowdy tried them himself, and soon enough, he was just as hyper. This was humanity's first run-in with coffee, or so the story goes. When exactly people began consuming coffee is unclear, but at some point before the 1400s in Western Ethiopia, people began foraging for wild coffee in the forest undergrowth. The reason coffee blends are equipped with lots of caffeine might be because it makes them unattractive to herbivores or more attractive to pollinators. But either way, people caught on to coffee's advantages and began making tea from its leaves, combining its berries with butter and salt for sustaining snacks. Oh, and drying, roasting, and simmering its cherries into an energizing elixir. Coffee rose trade routes into the Middle East. Its widespread popularity began growing Coffee rose trade routes into the Middle East, and the widespread popularity began brewing in earnest in the 1450s. Upon returning from a visit to Ethiopia, a Sufi leader recommended that the worship in Yemen use coffee during ritual chants and dances. Soon enough, people within the Ottoman Empire began roasting and grinding the beans to yield a darker, bolder beverage. Many gathered in guest houses and outside mosques to partake in coffee's comforts, but the authority grew concerned about whether coffee's influence was illicit or intoxicating, and if Muslims should be allowed to drink it. Indeed, in 1511, a religious court in Mecca put the coffee on trial. Scholars finally deemed it permissible, so coffee has sprung up in Damascus, Istanbul, and beyond, where clientele could sip coffee, smoke, and enjoy a variety of entertainment. By the late 1500s, people in Yemen were farming coffee and exporting it from Port of Amaha, which became known in other parts of the world as Milka. But coffee was eventually transported or smuggled into India and soon took root in Java and beyond. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire introduced the stimulating substance to Europe. Central, Central London's first coffee houses opened Central London's first coffee houses opened in the 1650s. By 1663, there were more than 50. By 1663, there were more than 80. And despite King Charles II's attempt to ban them in 1675, coffee houses kept simmering as social and intellectual hotbeds. In 1679, for instance, patrons of Galway's coffee house had the pleasure of watching Robert Hooke, the scientist who coined the term cell, publicly dissect hoppus. In France, people began mixing coffee with milk and sugar, and throughout the 1700s, Paris's coffee houses hosted enlightened figures like Diderot and Bottel, who allegedly drank 50 cups of coffee a day. Granted, these were likely small servings of comparatively weak coffee, but still impressive. Meanwhile, European empires began profiting off coffee growing, establishing enslaved or exploited workforces in Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. As cultivation boomed in Latin America, fueled by slavery, growers displaced indigenous populations and burned forests to establish ever-expanding plantations. By 1906, Brazil was exporting over 80% of the world's coffee. That same year, the Milan World Fair showcased the first commercial espresso machine, and alongside the development of industrial roasting equipment became various coffee brands. By the mid-1950s, about 60% of U.S. factories incorporated coffee breaks. As African countries cut colonial ties, many ramped up coffee production, and coffee drinking also later made inroads in East Asia, especially at canned, pre-prepared beverages. In more recent decades, specialty coffee with emphasis on quality blends and brewing methods grew popular and propelled firms in Central America and East Africa. Yet coffee workers worldwide continue to endure inhumane conditions and insufficient compensation. This motivated certification efforts for coffee production that met ethical standards, including minimum wage and sustainable farming. But issues still loom over the industry. And because of climate change, the equatorial bean belt, where coffee thrives, is projected to shrink in upcoming decades. It's unclear exactly what this might look like, but scientists are investigating possibilities like resilient coffee hybrids that might help better the unpredictable future, or to protect the beverage that become a cherished part of the daily ritual worldwide.